Hi, Ho Drinkerinos. I'm Steve Kuntz, and we have an amazing show for you today. Meredith Smith from Chapelle and Sawtooth Winery is in the house. She's here, and she's going to be talking all about life up on the slope, what it's like to be the head winemaker at the state's largest winery, and all that fun stuff. Plus, we have an awesome community calendar for you today, brought to you by Boise Beer Buddies, and lots more coming up on today's show. It's time for the Warren Reserve Cocktail of the Week, and this week's cocktail is a Rum Manhattan. There's got to be a cooler name for that. Maybe like a Havana or another name in Cuba that I don't know, or some other tropical island. I don't know, but it's called the Rum Manhattan. We're going to start with our Warren Reserve Cocktail Bitters. This is aromatic. We're going to do 2 dashes of that into the tin. 2. And then we're going to do 2 dashes of Warren Reserve Cocktail Orange Bitters. These ones pack a real punch. They're really nice. So we got 2 in there. And then we're going to add some ice. Let's get some ice in there. That's good. Now we're going to do our rum. 2 ounces of rum. This is a good rum. Bardenay rum. It's 1.5. 2. And then we're going to do our vermouth, which is I got Norley Pratt sweet vermouth, all the way from Paris, France. We're going to do 1 ounce of this guy. All right, and then you stir up for a little stir. Manhattans are great. They're nice, like a sipping cocktail. You don't want to pound that one down. It's got a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of sweetness. It's a nice drink. So then we're going to strain this guy out into our cocktail glass, our coupe. Oh, look how pretty that is. And then as a garnish, 1 little cherry. 1 cocktail cherry. And boop. And there you have it. It's our Rum Manhattan. It's this week's Warren Reserve Cocktail of the Week, the Rum Manhattan, with 4 dashes of Warren Reserve bitters, the aromatic and the orange, that you can get at warrenreserve.com. Use my promo code Idaho Booze 25 at checkout. You'll get 15% off when you spend $40 or more, which you will just buying these wonderful bitters. And if you like the Warren Reserve Cocktail of the Week and you have a cocktail you want to share with us, please send it in to idahoboozepod at gmail.com. And if we choose your cocktail, you will win yourself a Warren Reserve bitter cocktail pack here we have. And you're going to love it. Their bitters are made in Idaho. They're amazing. They're really good. And they add a lot of flavor to any drink. Let's check out how this Rum Manhattan tastes. Oh, man. It's a nice take on the Manhattan. I like it. It's a little sweeter. It's got a little bit of that, that rum funkiness that we all like. And the bitters really shine through. The aromatic and the orange bitters in there are really nice. So that's it. You got your Rum Manhattan. It's this week's Warren Reserve Cocktail of the Week. Ready to amp up your summer cocktail program? Just add a dash of Warren Reserve Ginger Root bitters to your favorite cocktail and let the magic of pure ginger root transform your boring drink into an amazing summer refresher. Warren Reserve Ginger Root bitters are made with fresh ginger root, so the flavor you're getting is pure ginger. Use these bitters to add tons of flavor to any mule, Moscow, or otherwise, or add them to a margarita for a little spice. Get your ginger root bitters or any delicious Warren Reserve bitters or syrups at warrenreserve.com. Use my promo code Idaho Booze 25 at checkout. Save 15% on your next purchase. Add a blast of flavor to your summer cocktails with Warren Reserve Ginger Root Bitters. Welcome back to the Idaho Booze Podcast. I'm Steve Kuntz here with Meredith Smith. Meredith, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Meredith, you are the head winemaker at Idaho's largest and oldest winery at Chapelle and Sawtooth. How is that going? What's that like, being the winemaker at the oldest and largest winery in the state?
Well, I mean, I think it's great. I just when I set out to be in the winemaking industry, I was not prepared to be the winemaker for the largest and the oldest winery in the state.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened, though. What you didn't, I guess, from your bio anyway, it says you didn't start in winemaking. Where did you start, and how did you sort of find winemaking?
Well, I started out in real estate and went into some tax work and then into real estate development. And while I was down in Texas and I was working on several real estate development projects, I was studying viticulture through the Washington State program and then traveling back and forth. And once I finished the program there, I decided that I wanted to take a job in the wine industry. I read a quote in a book somewhere that's, I can't remember the name of the book, but it said, pay attention to what you pay attention to. And at that point, it was very obvious to me that my focus was agriculture, food, and wine, and mainly wine. I've always really enjoyed wine. And so one time when I came back to Boise, I went to the 8th Street Wine Company, and someone had passed over a wine to me, which was the Fraser Winery, Bill Fraser, and they didn't tell me where it was from, and they said, taste this, and I said, oh my, that's a good wine, and they said it's from Idaho, and so then I knew that I wanted to find a wine job in Idaho. So I went out to Sawtooth Winery, and Bill Murray was a winemaker at the time, and I asked him for a cellar job. And he said, come see me in the fall when I'm hiring for harvest, and we'll see what we can do.
Nice. And so that's an interesting quote. Pay attention to what you pay attention to. Basically, it means that, what are the things that you really love and the things that are kind of, that you're kind of drawn to, I guess. And I guess finding a job in that area was the best way for you to sort of, again, I don't know what you were doing before, if you liked it, real estate, I guess. But it's obvious that you found something that you really like now, right?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed real estate development. I thought it was very challenging, and it was a good job. But when I got into wine, it was completely different. It was something that I loved, and it didn't feel as much like work. It's also very challenging, and it's you want to learn more and more about it all the time. It's just never ending learning and challenging. So I really like that.
Yeah, and you started out, like you said, working at Sawtooth. And what was sort of the history of that winery before you got there? And how did you sort of kind of grow up and go from working in the cellar to like where you are now, being there?
Well, so my first harvest there was under Bill Murray. He was the new winemaker for Sawtooth. He arrived from California. He was a winemaker down there for several years for Acacia and Bouchain. And there were two of us in the cellar that were working. And we went through the harvest. And once we finished that harvest, there was an assistant winemaker too. But once we finished the harvest, the assistant winemaker wanted to go do his own thing. So it opened up a spot for one of us to stay on. And Bill chose me to stay on as an associate winemaker. And that was in 2009. And so by 2011, Bill was asked to move to Washington to go be the winemaker for Canoe Ridge Winery. And so then at the time, I became the associate winemaker for Sawtooth. But then by 2012, I became the winemaker for Sawtooth. And then Precept, who owns us right now, Precept Wine out of Washington, They had purchased St. Chapelle in about 2011. And then in 2016, the winemaker left St. Chapelle, and Precept asked me to be the winemaker for both Sawtooth and St. Chapelle.
Hey,
Yeah.
double the job.
Well, yeah, I didn't realize what was going on. I as far as volume, because at Sawtooth, when I first started there, it was about 25,000 cases. And I think by the time 2012, we were closer to about 15,000 cases. And I remember I was at a pouring at a grocery store, and I had both Sawtooth and St. Chapelle wines, and specifically the Special Harvest Huckleberry. And I got the phone call as I was pouring, and they had asked me if I wanted to be the winemaker for both, and I said yes. And then I remember I hung up the phone and then tasted the soft huckleberry again, the Special Harvest Huckleberry, and I thought, wow, this is what I'm going to be making now too. But it went from about 15,000 cases. St. Chapelle was around 100,000 cases at the time, so it was quite a big jump.
Not just double the job.
Yeah, I remember
5 times the job.
Yeah, I remember it was in July, and that's a really tough time to move into a new winery, because you don't really know kind of the ins and outs, the volume, where your fruit's coming from, and so it was a little bit difficult that first year. But
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because you're going in, you're looking at all the tanks, and on the outside of the tank it just says like 22, or I guess at the time it would have been like 10 cab or whatever, right? And you don't know what that tastes like. You don't know what it's gone through. You don't know what's happening. Yeah. So how did you sort of rectify that in your mind?
Because at St. Chapelle, I mean, we have about 113 tanks, and at Sawtooth, I probably had, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 tanks. And then I had I have 4 presses here, and I had 2 small presses there. And but I think part of the thing was that I didn't focus on the volume, because I thought it would be overwhelming for me. And so I just focused on what harvest was going to be, and how to bring the fruit in and get through harvest, and then I could focus on things later.
Yeah. And I'm sure it was just,
we still had Sawtooth over at the other property. So at the time, Sawtooth wasn't on St. Chapelle's property. So I was going back and forth between both.
Where was Sawtooth at that time?
It's in Nampa, south of Nampa, their original location. And it's about a 20-minute drive from St. Chapelle. It wasn't until about 2017 did they build the Sawtooth tasting room on St. Chapelle's property.
Oh, okay.
We moved.
And so that's, I was going to say, it would have been just about like a 10-minute walk, right? Just going right down back between them.
That would have been nice, but it wasn't like that.
I imagine now you have everything sort of in one place, right? Or do you still have like a separate Sawtooth winery and a separate St. Chapelle, or are they all in the same one? So
we have 2 separate wineries and then 1 production facility. And just kind of give you an idea of the volume is, we were at Sawtooth, we were around 250 tons of fruit. And when I moved over in 2016, we did 2,200 tons.
Man, so you grew that place up pretty good then.
Yeah. Well, it was already at that point.
Yeah.
I just had to manage such a larger volume.
And so I guess with the new winery, when you took over at St. Chapelle, you also took on a bunch of new growers and the amount of people that came into your life because of that just saying yes while you were at the Albertsons pouring wine or whatever. That must have been something you didn't really think of before you said that yes. And then once you were thrust into this new world, what was that like, getting to know all these new growers and all these new people that were in your life all of a sudden?
It was a fast transition, just because
Yeah.
most of the fruit does come from the Sawtooth Skyline Vineyards, Winemakers LLC, and then because that's about 600 tons of fruit. But then I was also dealing with the Sims Group, and they had fruit in Marcine and then in Caldwell, and so I had to understand their properties.
Mm-hmm. And so you had to, I mean, I know as the winemaker, you have to actually go out there and figure out, what they're doing. Aren't you're kind of collaborative with the farmers at that point, right?
Yeah, that's true. I did have to, because like I said, it was in July when I moved over, and harvest typically starts in September. And so I had to ramp up pretty quick to figure out, where the fruit was coming from. I had to go, make sure I knew what the fruit was tasting like. And yeah, it was a quick turnover.
Yeah, I can just imagine it being, that would be pretty overwhelming, I think, for anyone.
Yeah.
So you were able to, do that. You were able to get in there and get it figured out. So what would you say? Let's just talk about Sawtooth when you first started at Sawtooth and kind of rose up the ranks there, because I think Sawtooth has been around. How long has Sawtooth been around for?
Early 80s.
Mm-hmm. And St. Chapelle was in the 70s.
Early 70s.
70 something.
Yeah.
So Sawtooth was pretty old too. I mean, it'd been around for a while. I mean, at that point, you're talking about 30 years, probably 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And so what were some of Sawtooth's signature wines back when you started? And then what would you say they were when you left?
Well, so early on, I deal with about 23 different varietals right now. And at the time when I was at Sawtooth, I was probably dealing with about 19. So a lot of the varietals that I dealt with there are still the same ones that I'm dealing with now. Tempranillo has always been a standard for Sawtooth. Pinot Gris has always been the standard for Sawtooth. Syrah. There were so many blocks that I was working with at the Sawtooth and Skyline Vineyard. And most of those I still work with. A lot of the Rhone varietals. So you've got the Syrah, the Viognier, the Grenache was early on. And then the Chardonnay, mini Chardonnay blocks. And then they have several blocks of Cab. There's Malbec, Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot. All of that I still work with.
And what did you sort of add to the portfolio while you were there?
I think some of the things that I remember working on, I remember that the rosé was always a Cinsault rosé, and I started working with Grenache rosé early on. I did change the color too. I think the colors early were a little bit more red, and I was more of a Provence style rosé drinker, so I went towards the lighter Provence rosés. And then the other ones that I worked with are the GSM, I thought, and a standalone Grenache. There weren't any standalone Grenaches at the time, and so I had a standalone Grenache, and then I worked with some GSMs. So, but I only had one block of Grenache, and it was hard to split it between rosé and standalone and GSM, but I was trying to do the best I can. And eventually that block 35 of Grenache, I think it froze out, and so they had to pull it out. Since then we've planted another Grenache block that's producing really great fruit, but that was kind of some of the early projects.
Is that something? Oh, go ahead.
The winemaker Bill Murray, that was one of the things was he always loved Tempranillo, and he likes to put Grenache in Tempranillo, which it's a good combination. But we didn't really have very much, and that's when I started to branch out with that Grenache and try different things.
So where were you with the GS? Like, were you one of the first GSMs, or did you see someone else had made one and
No,
you
I
decided
think
to
I
do it,
was.
or how did that come on?
Yeah, I think I was kind of
You
one
think
of
you were
the
the
first
first?
ones. I don't know if I was
That's pretty
definitely,
cool.
but I mean, I can't claim
Well, we're seeing.
that, but I know I was.
We can say whatever we want. No one's listening. It's fine.
Yeah,
You heard it here first. Meredith Smith made the first GSM on the Sunny Slope.
I don't know.
Well, it certainly
I don't
has
want to
taken
take
off
it away
since
from someone.
then.
Yeah, it's a good one for Idaho.
It certainly is. I think the way I'm looking at it, especially for the book, I'm looking at it as sort of maybe it's Idaho's wine. Maybe that's going to be like Idaho's claim to fame. So what were your initial thoughts? Do you remember when you put that wine together?
You know, I don't. You know, I wish I could remember when I did put it together, but I do focus a lot on old world wines. I like the style, and I like the purity of it, and so those. I also noticed that some of the mid ripening varietals were doing well. Kind of some of the early ripening varietals and the late ripening varietals at that time were subject to climate and temperature variations that could hurt them, but that's not really happening now. You know, I've been doing this now for 17 years, and so I've noticed that some of those late ripening varietals, we typically don't have to worry about those getting ripe these days. But back then we did. And so I kind of focus more on the ones that ripened during the middle of the season because I could always count on those. And I think just with the GSM, the blend was just to start new things, just try something different. And that's, you know, it was just, you know, like I said, he always used that Grenache for Tempranillo, but I just knew it had more potential to do other things. And I really think it's because I focus on old world wines.
Yeah, we've talked to other makers of GSMs, and they always go back to it being sort of like that, like a Chateauneuf de Pop, or like a sort of a play on a Côte de Rhône, something like that. And I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, what I like about them is they do have a little bit of acidity. They're kind of easy to drink, much like a Chateauneuf or like a Côte de Rhône. Were those sort of the things that you were looking at when you were building that wine as well? You wanted something drinkable, but also something that was kind of old world as well?
Yeah, I was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a good combination because the Grenache and the Mourvèdre at the time, you know, again, somewhat late ripening varietals, they had the acid, and then the Syrah would ripen, and so it just made a good combination at the time. You know, it was a good pairing.
Mm-hmm. And out of those three, you talked about Grenache, and you kind of, it seems like you like Grenache quite a bit. Out of, I guess, Mourvèdre and Syrah, which one of those ones are you kind of more likely to have, like maybe at your table, or you're more likely to have around the house as a standalone? Any of them, or do you prefer the GSM?
Well, I mean, my favorite varietal is Pinot Noir. That's what I drink the most of. So, but I do. I like. I think I like the Tempranillo in Idaho, and I like the Syrah in Idaho. I think it produces really great wine, and the Grenache as well. The Mourvèdre, I think, is good, but I still haven't had too many standalones for it yet. But I think if I'm gonna drink wine, I tend to move more towards food wine. And so
Sure.
some of the standalone Grenaches, I'm not a big fan of sometimes if they're too high alcohol. And I think the Grenache for Idaho can be light but very intense in flavors and aromatics. And it's kind of, to me, sometimes I would call it the Idaho Pinot Noir. It's just a really beautiful, aromatic, lovely wine. But I do tend to move more towards the whites and the lighter reds because I like it with food.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, wine with food. Who knew? It's great. So you were at Sawtooth before, like we talked about, and then all of a sudden you were faced with the St. Chapelle thing. So how was life? Was there like a little period of time between when you became the head winemaker at Sawtooth? I guess there was a little bit of time between that and when St. Chapelle acquired, or I guess the main company acquired both of them at once. Is that how it kind of went down, or did St. Chapelle acquire Sawtooth first?
So Precept purchased Sawtooth shortly after I started there. And
okay.
Yeah, and then in 2011, Precept purchased the St. Chapelle label. And they didn't own the land, but they had the label. And so
okay.
I was dealing with it a little bit, but not so much because St. Chapelle had a winemaker at the time. The only reason why, we had the barrel room and St. Chapelle didn't have the barrel room at the time. And so the winemaker was making some wines over at our facility for St. Chapelle. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys already kind of had a working relationship going.
Yeah, kind of. I think part of the thing was they had tasting room wines, but they wanted to kind of start a new program for the St. Chapelle tasting room wines. And so I was involved in that. And that's kind of where, St. Chapelle has a nice lineup of the panoramic series for their tasting room wines now. But that was my early start into St. Chapelle before I moved over in 2016.
So that's kind of interesting. I was noticing that as well on the website, that St. Chapelle has a number of different sort of labels that it uses. So what are those, and how do they sort of differentiate? Because I didn't know. I was like, I love Idaho. Cool. Let's see what that is.
Yeah.
Panoramic. That sounds cool. So what are kind of the differences between those? Sorry if you can hear my dogs. They're barking at the pooper scooper that's here.
You have one of those. That's a nice bed.
He's here every week, and they bark at him every week.
So with St. Chapelle, when I first moved over, they had the Chateau series, which is their kind of mainline off-premise accounts. So in your grocery stores, and it's their Chateau series, and that was the majority of the volume of their wines. And then slowly we just started to create some additional wines. One would be the Panoramic series, which is their high-end tasting room wines. And then they came up with the Open Air series wines, and those are kind of the middle tier, and they were more for all the concerts that they have out here every week. And then Love Idaho was just kind of a kind of more of a just a middle price point for the grocery stores, and that's where the Love Idaho label came through.
Yeah, it's a nice label. I like that one. I'm drawn to that one as a Idahoan, and the other ones, that's really cool. So that makes a lot of sense. So the panoramic ones are kind of, I guess, so you have to go into them with a different mindset for each one of the different labels, right? So you have to, I guess you probably pick whatever the premium fruits are for the panoramic. I'm not really sure. How does that work?
Yeah.
Because in brewing, we just have the same ingredients. Like we just use the same thing.
Yeah.
So how does it work for you when you're doing that?
Well, when it first started out too, because I also was handling Sawtooth at the same time. So we did have to somewhat differentiate those two labels. And we kept our main labels that we typically would make for Sawtooth with Sawtooth, not labels, but varietals. So like your Tempranillo, your GSM, your Grenache, all that stayed with them. And then with Sawtooth, with St. Chapelle, we started to utilize some of the other varietals. Maybe we had too many at Sawtooth, so we kind of split them up, like Petite Syrah and would come over to the St. Chapelle label. But the way I make wine is I always try to make wine the best that I can make it, regardless of what label I'm working with. Um, I I I do kind of when I came over to St. Chapelle, I knew there was a customer that, several customers, because it was about 75,000 cases of the,
Couple customers.
yeah, I know, 75,000 cases of the Chateau series. So I wanted to make sure that I was making that wine that, that, that was still within their, profile for that wine, but I also changed it slightly too. And so, um, I just kind of went with that. And then with the tasting room wines, we wanted for St. Chapelle, we wanted to have a high end, the panoramic series. So that you're right, I did, utilize this. It's mostly from the Sawtooth vineyard site where all the higher end fruit is coming from for the tasting room skews.
That's interesting. And so what are your, like, say you have an idea for a new wine. I know that it takes forever to do it. You have to plant grapes or buy grapes or whatever. But like, how do you work with Precept, or do you have a marketing team or whatever that you then to find out which one it goes into? Or do you have sort of an innate sense of, like, say you want to put out a Pinot Noir, like, do you know kind of where that's going to go, or do you have people that kind of decide that, or how does that work?
I think we decided as a group. We've got Precept has a production planning. We get together every year. We talk about production planning for the upcoming year, and see where we may have holes, where we need stuff, and then I can have some recommendations. The tasting rooms may have some recommendations, and then we just kind of, as a group, try to figure out where we're going to go. We've got some Sangiovese and some Nebbiolo planted that I should be getting a little bit this year, but it's still young fruit, and so I don't anticipate. Maybe I'll make a rosé out of it or something, but I don't anticipate a Sangio at this time from that fruit, just because it'll be third leaf.
What does that mean? Third leaf. What does third leaf mean?
Well, third leaf is just kind of when it's the third year that it has been in the ground, and so typically when you plant a vine, you'll get a little bit of fruit on year 3. And but it's usually not a lot, and it can be pretty fruity and maybe not as intense and mature as maybe an older vine. And so by year 5 you should be getting a fairly full crop of wine, or of grapes to make wine. But again, it's still kind of young. But for whites, year 5, it's going to make some really nice wine. Maybe even year 4, rosés, whites. But for me, with reds, I like to wait until that vine's probably about 7 years old, and then I can get some intensity off of it, and some structure and the stuff that I'm looking for.
So we're not going to see a St. Chapelle Barolo this year, or there's not going to be a 25 vintage of St. Chapelle Barolo.
Not from Idaho. Yeah, not from Idaho.
Well, that's exciting that you have those grapes planted.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Because we planted the Grenache block. The Winemakers LLC planted a Grenache, a Mourvedre, and Syrah, and those wines are showing really well. They have been for about 2 to 3 years now, I think they're on year 8 or 9 right now. So it takes a while.
Oh,
you have to be patient.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, patience.
And then you
take
take your 2 years in bottle too. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is so long.
It is a long time.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
You just pack it away and you're just like, vaya con Dios. We'll see you in 2 years.
Yeah.
That is wild. So with St. Chapelle being sort of the oldest and largest winery in the area in Idaho, there's, to me, I mean, in brewing, we sort of looked up to like Sockeye and some of the other Highlands Hollows and places like that. So do you kind of have that too? Do you get a lot of people asking you questions? Do you have sort of like this intrinsic like leadership position that you assume as the head winemaker there?
I think early on when we were at Sawtooth, it was more. Um, it was when it was a little bit when the industry was a little bit smaller. We would get together at Sawtooth. I had other winemakers out there: Melanie from Cinder, Leslie from Coiled, Angie from Paraplay. We were all out there. We were all working together and kind of collaborating on winemaking. But as the industry grows, I noticed that it's. I think people still collaborate, but it's not as much as it used to be. I think there's a lot of super talented winemakers in Idaho that are doing excellent, and so I don't think they need anything from me to be where they are, but I think early on it wasn't that.
Well, I think it's really cool that Joe was on the show, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, and he was very, very demonstrative in his praise for you and for everything that you and I guess your predecessor did for him while he was starting out. So I think that it seems to me like there is a little bit something there going on out in the slope, as we call it. That's what we call it. We call it the slope. The slope. I'm learning all this. Yeah, I'm writing this book, so I'm learning all this as I go. Sort of the not thesis. It sounds too wordy, but sort of the description of the book in my head anyway is that I'm learning all of this while people reading the book are also learning about it as well. So we're learning about it together, and that's what it's called. It's called the slope. That's what we call it, right?
Yeah, that's a great name because I think this area really shows off, what you're kind of trying to portray with that. I mean, this is when I was over at Sawtooth. I was south of Nampa, and I was kind of a standalone out there. Not a lot was going on. But when I moved over here in Caldwell in 2016, and I was exposed to this area, and I mean, I knew about Caldwell. It wasn't that it was new to me, but just to see the amount of people and the growing and the fruit and everything in this area it's impressive, and it just shows you what Idaho can do. I mean, Idaho. I'm really big on Idaho's fruit because they can grow great fruit, and if I'm doing about 23 different varietals and they're all producing very well, I mean, we've got a great location and a great future for us.
For sure, yeah, and it's growing even beyond where you guys are. I mean, there's I was out on the slope yesterday, and it's so cool to see. I was at actually Fujisan, and it's so neat to be able to see you can see the whole kind of area, the whole AVA from there, from where you guys are all the way to the Hawaii Mountains.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see just how much land you guys have up there, or whoever the growers are, Winemakers LLC or whatever they're called. And it's cool to see that you guys have that much, property and that much area to kind of play with. And there's so much more. It seems like there's just so much more that can be done still, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that area, that winery is beautiful. It does have a gorgeous view, and it does really showcase the slope that you're referring to. It's an amazing, and I love the history of this place because, you look back at ancient Lake Idaho, and this was all water, and that's what's so cool about it, because underneath that water you had plate tectonic shifts and lava flowing up through there. And so you get all these underwater volcanoes, and there are all these cinder pits. And that's kind of the history of this area. And that's what makes this land so fertile and grow, the ability to grow so many different types of products out here. It's really neat.
Yeah,
like Lizard Butte is, I look at Lizard Butte from my window, and it's an ancient volcano from that time. And that's what's so neat. And then when you go over to Sawtooth and that vineyard has cinder pits all the way around it.
That's cool.
And it really
Yeah, and then there's like scoria. Scoria has like a vent underneath it or whatever.
Same. Yeah,
it's
it's very neat. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come right back with Meredith Smith from Sawtooth and Ste. Chapelle right after this. Heading out to the lake is great, and Treasure Valley Chevron is here to make that lake trip even better with a crazy selection of snacks, drinks, and stuff for your long weekend away. Need a lift for the road? With the Treasure Valley's largest assortment of energy drinks, energy shots, coffee, candy, sodas, and more, you can fuel yourself up for the long trip along with your car. Looking for something more substantial? TVC has a huge assortment of snacks, chips, and more to munch on during your trek. Hit up Treasure Valley Chevron at I-84 and Gowan Road or Highway 55 at Beacon Light and see why TVC is your best stop for any trip. Welcome back to the Idaho Booze Podcast. We're here with Meredith Smith. Meredith, still doing good?
Doing great.
Good to hear. So we were talking about just sort of the ins and outs of working for the big company and having Ste. Chapelle and Sawtooth and what that was like to kind of go back and forth. And now I kind of want to talk more about the wines and sort of what you guys have been doing up there in regards to stuff that goes into bottles. So what would you say is, or cans or whatever you guys put stuff in. So what would you say are the signature wines of Sawtooth and Ste. Chapelle right now? Maybe your best sellers or the ones people most know you for, stuff like that.
So I think that for Sawtooth, the Tempranillo, the GSM, the Syrah, and the Pinot Gris. And then I think for Ste. Chapelle, the Special Harvest Huckleberry, and probably the Soft Red is one of the bigger ones for us. And then from the tasting room standpoint, some of the Malbecs and the Petite Syrah and some of the Cabs. And then we do have a new red blend for the Ste. Chapelle Panoramic Series that's just coming out. We've got a new Albarino, which is going to be fun. And then some of the rosés that we produce. So we own we contract fruit. We've got a big Pinot Noir block, and so I do make part of a base wine for Gruet, and we're hoping that we get some either Chardonnay or some Pinot Noir sparkling for both facilities, but made from Idaho.
Tasty.
Fruit.
Can't
wait
for that.
I'm excited about that one.
I'm excited about anything that comes in bubbles. I like bubbles. So
I do
whatever you can get out, especially if it's got some Pinot Noir in it, I'm all for it. And what sort of, so again, you're really into sort of old world run style wines. That's in your bio. I just, I did some reading. I did my research. Which wines do you have out now that are sort of like in that style? And what would you like to make in the future that's sort of that style that you're not making now?
Well, I would always love to be able to make a Pinot Noir, but I think it's a little bit harder for Idaho. But I do think, like we talked about, I think the bubbles from both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir block is a good one. And then I kind of like I like whites with nice high acidity. And so I do like the Sauvignon Blanc is a really nice one that I think is that I enjoy. Let's see. I'm excited about the Bordeaux blend. It's kind of new. I mean, we've done a Bordeaux blend before, but I think as we become warmer here in Idaho, those late ripening varietals, the Cab, the Merlot, the Petit Verdot, they don't get as much pyrazine. So some of your green pepper flavors that you used to get years ago, they don't really show up. They're really nice fruity wines, and and they're making some great blends. So I do think that's a one to look out for as well.
All right. Be on the lookout for that.
Viognier I love.
Sure. Yeah,
You
Viognier
know,
is
the
great.
Rhones are still always going to be good. The Rhone varietals, I love the Viognier, and the Albarino was nice. I got some of that fruit from Williamson's vineyard, and like I said, the Sauvignon Blanc and bubbles, and then Riesling. Riesling is a beautiful wine, and we've got a lot of Riesling, but that dry Riesling is just really nice. It's very aromatic and has nice acid.
I like a good dry Riesling as well. I like those. I'm with you on the white wine. I like something acidic. I also like anything with bubbles, really. I'm pretty good with. Do you guys do like did you just recently have a spring release?
It's this weekend.
Oh, it's this weekend. Okay. Well, what do you have? What do you have coming out?
Well, so I mean, at least for Saint Chapelle, we've got a panoramic Pinot Gris for them. So that'll be the first panoramic as a Pinot Gris for them. Most of the Pinot Gris that we make for Sawtooth will go into the grocery store, and but we were able to put some aside and do a panoramic for them. And then the other one will be the Malbec is what we're going to release for the Saint Chapelle.
That's fantastic. Sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of neat. So I guess as a driver to get people out to the winery, as opposed to just buying your stuff in the grocery store, if they want that panoramic, if they want the Pinot Gris or the Malbec, then they have to come and see you, right?
Yeah, you know, the tasting room wines, because those blocks are so small over at Sawtooth, maybe they're about an acre or a half an acre. We can only produce anywhere from about 100 to 300 cases total. And so most of those wines, they don't typically get out into the grocery store very often because we just don't have the volume to get it there.
Gotcha. And so if you were told that you could only take, let's go over ever since you started at Sawtooth, if you could only take 3 wines that you make at Sawtooth and Saint Chapelle right now, if you could only take 3 of them, what 3 would they be?
Oh, let me think.
You have to choose which one of your children you like the best.
Yeah. Well, so I would, so for Sawtooth, I would stick with, that's tough. These are tough questions. Let me go to Saint Chapelle. Let's see. Because I know for Saint Chapelle, I would probably go with the Sauvignon Blanc. I think the red blend is going to be a good one for them as a Pano series. And either the Malbec or Petit Rideau. Can't decide. Sawtooth Tempranillo. And then I would stick with the GSM. I can't believe you only give me 3 to choose from.
I know, you have so many.
Viognier or GSM, Syrah, Grenache, those are all, I would stick in that. But yeah, those are the ones I would
maybe try to sneak an extra couple in.
Yes.
And then if you go back, are there any vintages that stand out to you in some of those that you would grab? Or maybe you already have?
Yeah, so I know 2012 was a good vintage. The last 2012, 2020, I can't, let me think. 2023 was a good vintage. 17 we had the big freeze and we lost most of the vines in 2017. And then 18 was a recovery. 19, 20 was COVID. So I would
Good
say
times.
12 and 20, either 22 or 20, 12 or 22, 23 stand out to me.
Mm-hmm. Just great grapes those years, 12 and 22. 10 years apart. That's interesting. So we think 32 is probably going to be the next great one?
Well, just because I mean, because the last, I would say, even like this, we're just bottling right now, and that fruit is great too. So that's the 2024 vintage. The 2023 vintage was good. The 2022 vintage was good. I remember 12 being good. And I do remember 17 as being the freeze vintage, and 18 was the recovery vintage.
Just one more question to ask. What goes in, this is something I ask pretty much everybody. What goes into choosing for you? What do you look at when you choose your fruit? Everybody kind of, I know, has the same things they're looking for. They say acidity and sugar and everything like that. But is there anything to you that stands out when you see fruit that you really, really like versus fruit that you think maybe isn't for you?
I do think that when you go out to the vineyard and you're tasting the fruit often, you can taste when it's going to be really good. And it's just is kind of, you just know it. You just taste it, and to yourself, you think, this is going to make some really nice wine this year. And I think it's more just the overall balance of that. It's just got a lot of fruit. The acid's nice, and it has a lot of flavor profiles, just as the grape. And so you just realize that it's going to be good as wine.
That's great. Perfect. And Meredith Smith, thank you so much from Sawtooth and Ste. Chapelle. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything coming up at the winery that you want to talk about, or anything going on that you want people to know about?
Well, we do have several concerts all summer long. So if you have the opportunity to come out here, we had about 1,000 people out here for Mother's Day, and it was a great event. And
Wow.
Sawtooth has, I know it's a pretty busy place out here, but it sure is fun. We have great views, and so you can hit 2 wineries at one time, and it's a fun place to be. So we'd love to have you come out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. This has been Meredith Smith. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
that was
having
such
me.
a great so great to meet you, and I'm so excited to come out and check out Ste. Chapelle. We actually did Sawtooth a little while ago, but looking forward to checking out Ste. Chapelle. So thank you so much. Ready to amp up your summer cocktail program? Just add a dash of Warren Reserve ginger root bitters to your favorite cocktail and let the magic of pure ginger root transform your boring drink into an amazing summer refresher. Warren Reserve ginger root bitters are made with fresh ginger root, so the flavor you're getting is pure ginger. Use these bitters to add tons of flavor to any mule, Moscow, or otherwise, or add them to a margarita for a little spice. Get your ginger root bitters or any delicious Warren Reserve bitters or syrups at warrenreserve.com. Use my promo code Idaho Booze 25 at checkout. Save 15% on your next purchase. Add a blast of flavor to your summer cocktails with Warren Reserve Ginger Root Bitters. Welcome back to the Idaho Booze Podcast. I'm Steve Kuntz. We are in the middle of festival time, people. Shade City, just a couple weeks ago, heard from on the ground. Very fun. And this weekend, we have the Green Acres Food Truck Park Idaho Wildlife Ale Fest. This one, unlimited beer tasting. Oh, put on your drinking pants. Saturday, May 17th. So that is tomorrow from 3 to 8 p.m. at the Shoreline Drive Food Truck Park. That's 1401 Shoreline Drive to be exact. Next up, Sockeye Brewing is putting on a 36th Street Sunday Market, 10 a to 1 p this Sunday this is at their 36th Street Ale House. This is going to be a big market with lots of local people. We've sold stuff at this thing before. It's really cool. Lots of local farmers, craft makers, small businesses. You're going to find fresh produce and meats, local art, baked goods, so much more. So that's going to be rain or shine. It's going to be outside. That's at the Sockeye 36th Street Ale House, the 36th Street Sunday Market. Check that out. Brownbeard is doing a little thing tonight, 4:00. This is for Beer Buddies exclusively. We're going to be doing a Borderlands Barrel Aged Golden Stout release party tonight. First access to the Borderlands Barrel Aged Golden Stout will be the Beer Buddies. So if you're not a beer buddy, well, you know how to go get one. BoiseBeerBuddies.com. Use my promo code BoozePod. Get 2 for 1 on that. Get a BOGO on your Beer Buddies card. Get one for your friend. So yeah, Borderlands is it's the barrel aged stout. We talked about it with Bryce when I was over there. It's a barrel aged golden stout aged in Willet barrels. So it's gonna be very whiskey forward, I would imagine, very bourbon forward. And it's going to be also, I guess it's a twist on the flagship beer, the Brewski. Oh God, that's a mouthful. So get on over to the Brown Beard Barrel House on Chinden. This is the one that's next door to Merriweather, over there on Chinden in Garden City. Looks like Sun Valley Brew Fest is coming up, another beer fest. Sun Valley one is great. Paul and those guys at Sawtooth do a great job putting this thing on every year. Saturday, June 21st, 12 to 5 p.m. Unlimited tastings. And this one actually does have a list of breweries. Let's check out and see who's going to be there. Let's see. New Belgium's going to be there. Farmers Brewing, very good. Bombastic is good. Bell's, we love them. Jeremiah Johnson, very good. Roadhouse. Melvin, of course. If Roadhouse is there, Melvin's probably going to be there. Bale Breaker. Freem. Meadowlark, Grand Teton, Real American Beer. So is Hulkster going to be there? I don't know. Maybe the Hulkster will be there. We don't know. But if you use your Beer Buddies card, use the coupon code BeerBuddy, get $5 off your ticket if you buy it online and you go to sunvalleybrewfest.com to buy those tickets. So that's what is happening with the Boise Beer Buddies beer calendar. Coming up next, we're going to do a little Friday Night Flights edition. We're going to try some wines and let you know how they taste next on the Idaho Booze Podcast. Patio season is here, and nothing brings down the vibe more than getting that bill at the end of happy hour when you're paying full price for pours. Don't be a sucker. Get a Boise Beer Buddies card. It means never having to pay full price with the summer patio season coming up. You need to save as much money as you can. Go to BoiseBeerBuddies.com, sign up for your Beer Buddies card, and save money at dozens of bars, restaurants, breweries, wineries, cideries, and more for just $20. What's that? You want to buddy up with a friend? Use my promo code BoozePod at checkout and get one for your best buddy for free. That's a BOGO Beer Buddy. Be a buddy and get your Boise Beer Buddies card today. Welcome back to the Idaho Booze Podcast. I'm Steve Kuntz, and we are doing a little Friday Night Flights edition. This one I did journey out into the Sunnyside Slope to check out some wines. We're going to start out with Sawtooth because we just had Meredith on. So we're going to talk about her Dry Viognier from Sawtooth. This is a really nice wine. It has a lot of notes of sort of honeysuckle and maybe a little bit of lavender. It drinks like more like kind of a rosé or maybe like a light red wine. It doesn't really drink like a white wine. It's not super crisp. It's not super appley or oaky or anything like that. But it has like all these really nice like sort of soft flavors. Like I said, lavender, honeysuckle, maybe a little bit of pear in there. Peach, definitely some stone fruit. Awesome wine. I would highly recommend the Sawtooth Dry Viognier. Also from Sawtooth, their huckleberry wine. This was a dry huckleberry wine. Really tasty. It had notes of blueberry, huckleberry, obviously, with like, again, sort of that floral, maybe like a rose petal, something like that. And it was just like a really nice, easy drinking kind of huckleberry wine. Some of these fruit wines come off as a little like tart or boozy. This one did not come off as either of those things. It was a really, really nice, like kind of take on that sort of wine, huckleberry wine from Sawtooth. Moving on, checked out Fujisan the other day up on the slope. Fujisan is up there. I don't really know where it is. It's sort of like the Bermuda Triangle once you get up there. I don't know which way is left, which way is right, north, south. It all doesn't make any sense. But you can find it. Just plug it into your GPS. You'll get there. And we tried the 2023 Rosé. This is an estate wine, I believe, and really, really tasty wine. It had a lot of really nice kind of strawberry, honeydew, a little bit of grapefruit, like kind of citrusy. And this one is Tempranillo Rosé, which is kind of interesting. Now, Misty, my amazing server that I had while I was there, said that this pairs excellently with Mexican food. So there you have it. Mexican food with the rosé, the 2023 Fujisan Estate Rosé. Super tasty. The Syrah. This was the other one I really wanted to talk about. It's a 2022 Estate Syrah. This is grown on the estate. So they actually have like a big block of Syrah grapes they call the Windseeker block. And the reason why they call it that is because after he planted all the grapes, the head winemaker and the owner of this guy, Mark or Martin, I can't remember his name, Mr. Fujisan, went out there and he was like, man, that's a beautiful looking block of Syrah grapes. And then he looked up and saw two red-tailed hawks floating above the Syrah grapes and thought to himself, those birds look like they are seeking the wind. Thus, Windseeker Syrah. This Syrah is it's a young Syrah, not fresh, young Syrah. And so I didn't know what that meant. So I texted our buddy Will Wetmore over at Veer, and he said to look out for flavors that are kind of fresher, juicier, sort of more lively. And that's exactly what I found. It was a very big, bright, refreshing Syrah. It wasn't super heavy, super complex, super complicated. It was just right there, all on the front part of the palate. Big, fresh, juicy flavors of blueberry, plum, fig. And then it didn't have like that peppery finish that you get from a lot of Syrahs. It was actually more kind of earthy and just really easy to drink. So I really enjoyed those two from Fujisan, the 2022 Windseeker Syrah and the Rosé from Tempranillo at Fujisan Family Cellars that you can check out there on the sunny slope. And that's going to do it for Friday Night Flights. We're going to come back, wrap things up right after this. Welcome back to the Idaho Booze Podcast. I'm Steve Kuntz. Let's wrap things up. Thank you to Meredith Smith. Oh my God, what a pleasure to have her on. Wasn't she great? She was amazing. She told us all about the wines that she's doing at St. Chapelle and Sawtooth, all about how sort of the whole Snake River Valley thing started. She was just a font of knowledge, and I want to thank her personally. Thank you so much, Meredith, for coming on the show. It was great to have you. Great to learn more about Sawtooth and St. Chapelle. And just a great hang all together. She was really good and really fun to hang out with. And she's my neighbor. God damn it. She just lives right next door. So have to wander over there, maybe borrow a cup of wine from her or something like that. I want to thank everybody out there for listening. I want to thank Warren Reserve Cocktail Company for their awesome sponsorship and the Warren Reserve Cocktail of the Week this week, that Rum Manhattan. What a great drink. Try that one out as soon as you can. And make sure you're getting some bitters with my promo code IdahoBooze25 at checkout at warrenreserve.com. Get 15% off. And we're going to have a new offer. This is breaking news. We'll have a new offer next week when the Warren Reserve folks come on the show. So Danny and Adrian are going to be on next week to talk all about their bitters and to give you guys a brand new deal on the promo code. So we'll get a new promo code. We'll get a new deal. It'll be freaking awesome. Also want to thank everybody out at Fujisan and Scoria and Snake River Wine Tours. Oh my God, thank you so much to Snake River Wine Tours. You guys are so amazing. Book that tour, snakeriverwinetours.com. Book it today. Go out there, see the grapes, see the wineries, drink some wine. Why don't you? It's freaking delicious. And we're going to be back next week, like I said, with a cocktail episode. Warren Reserve people, Danny and Adrian Warren, are coming in here to talk cocktails. Oh man, finally. I love me a cocktail. So we're going to talk all about those next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have anything to say to me or to anyone around me, you can email idahoboozepod@gmail.com. Go ahead and send that in and let me know what you think, what you really think. And that's going to do it from us here. I'm Steve Kuntz. This has been the Idaho Booze Podcast, and I want to say to you, good day and good drinking, everyone.